I'm about to present to you CEO of Astra Exploration. Astra Exploration is traded on the OTC under the ticker ATEPF and on the TSXV under the ticker ASTR.V. We will have Brian Miller, CEO, join us momentarily.
Appreciate everybody joining today. Thank you. My name is Brian Miller, CEO, Director, and Co-founder of Astra Exploration. Some of you may have heard of us. Some of you, this will be an introduction. I won't get into too many details on some of the stuff. I apologize on the time front, but we've got about less than 20 minutes to cover a lot of ground here. But we are a company that's relatively new. It was co-founded by myself and four others about 5 years ago, and we're focused primarily on gold and silver in Latin America. Standard cautionary statement. I don't have time to go through the team in much detail right now, but I do encourage you to go to the website and have a look at our PowerPoint and see some of the people who are involved with this company, what they've done in the past, the discoveries they've made, the values they've created for their shareholders, and some of the successful exits that they've had. This is a group that's very well experienced in Latin America with these types of deposits, particularly in Argentina and Chile, where we're going to be focusing on. Right here are some of my co-founders that started the company with me about 5 years ago. But just quickly, you'll see, for instance, Darcy Marud, spectacular career, led one of the team that discovered El Peñón deposit in northern Chile, as well as discovered the Mercedes mine in Mexico, and helped build the Cerro Moro mine in Argentina, which is a place we're going to be talking about today. Charles Funk, CEO at Heliostar, also involved with Vizsla Silver, where he was the VP Exploration when they discovered the Napoleon at Panuco. And then here on the management level, Roberto Alarcon, who also worked at Yamana with Darcy for many years. He was in-house counsel for Yamana, and prior to that, Homestake. He's Argentinian or a Chilean lawyer based in Santiago. And our head of exploration, Diego Guido, who is Argentinian based in Buenos Aires, a globally recognized epithermal expert, and also particularly sought out for his expertise in the Deseado Massif. And he also discovered the Pinguino deposit in Santa Cruz, which is the jurisdiction which we're active in. Very quickly here on the capital structure point, this is, I think, one of the most important points of the company, aside of the team and the assets. We have a very solid capital structure, tightly held, closely owned by a small group of individuals, and have a spectacular roster of shareholders. Michael Gentile is our largest shareholder, currently owns about, I think, 17%. Some of the other names, Peter Maroney, Mason Resources, Simon Marcotte, the guys at Agentis Capital. So these are people who are very active in the space. The Mason Resources is a group out of Toronto. That's Simon Marcotte, Peter Damouni, Fahad El-Tamimi, Victor Cantori, that group. And then management and directors, we own about 15%. So collectively, among those people that I mentioned there, give me a list of 24 names, and that accounts for about 80% ownership. So very closely held. About 100 million shares issued and outstanding, 115 fully diluted. Market cap of, we're closer to about 40 million right now, and cash on hand. This was our June position. We're closer to 1.5 million right now, what we have left in the treasury. So we have enough to fund the second program, drill program coming up here in the next 4 to 6 weeks, and enough funds to get us into 2026. In the portfolio right now, it consists of 3 projects, 2 in northern Chile, that's Pampa Paciencia and Cerro Bayo, and 1 in Argentina, La Manchuria. We're going to be talking about La Manchuria today because that is where we recently released the drill results from the gold-silver project, and where we will be drilling here in this upcoming drill campaign. Not that Pampa Paciencia and Cerro Bayo aren't important. There's a lot of deep value. Those are very solid projects. Pampa Paciencia, notably, again, a large epithermal gold-silver system, but also has a very attractive copper target, and it's just adjacent to the Spence and Sierra Gorda copper mines. But talking about Argentina here, and I apologize, I'll be looking up at a different screen as I'm going through this, but we're talking about the province of Santa Cruz, which is historically one of the most mining-friendly jurisdictions in Argentina. It's host to several past producing as well as currently producing mines, including world-class projects like Cerro Negro to the north, Cerro Vanguardia to the east, and then Cerro Moro further to the east yet. The province leads Argentina in gold and silver production, accounting for almost 60%. And of course, the new political regime in Argentina has been very favorable towards business in general, but mining in particular, and is attracting a lot of investment capital into the space. And just quickly, the Deseado Massif, this region that we're talking about, it's a geological region that is perhaps the most well-endowed region in the world for epithermal gold silver. It's a relatively young exploration region that really hadn't been explored until starting in the 90s with the discovery of Cerro Vanguardia and some M&A activity that peaked in the last gold cycle in 2012. Notably, Yamana buying the Cerro Muerto deposit for about 413 million, and Goldcorp, previous to that, buying Andean Resources for the Cerro Negro deposit for 3.4 billion. That was kind of the culmination of the last cycle, and there hasn't been much investment since then due to the political situation there, which I mentioned has changed, and we're seeing a major influx of investment into the region. Going to the project itself now, the blue outline here, this is the project that we're talking about. Notably, there's this pink outline here. I'll get to that in a moment, but it's a good sized land package, about 5,600 hectares. The previous exploration has solely focused on this small blue, dark blue circle in the center. There is a small resource there that was drilled out. It's a near surface resource. The previous explorers were focused on a near surface oxide resource, so they only drilled this shallowly, and they didn't really go after the high-grade feeder zones. And so that's our approach to this. Some of these feeder zones had some spectacular grades. They were open at depth and along strike. And so that's the approach that we're taking to this. The deal we got on this, it took us 13 months to get this done, but we signed a deal. We've got an option we can earn up to 90% interest. The first 80% we earned by spending 3 million in exploration. There's no cash payments, no share payments. And by the sixth year, we can elect to purchase an additional 10% for a $5 million cash payment. So very attractive deal terms for a very solid project. I mentioned this pink outline here. This is important. This outlines a basalt flow unit that took place after the deposit was in place. And so a lot of this is actually covered by this basalt flow unit. So we'll get into some of that in some more detail in some of these slides. But these are some of the previous results of drilling from past exploration. And these are the kind of results that we're talking about. They truly are spectacular grades. This is a narrow vein system, so most of the veins you're seeing at the thickest, they get about 2 meters. But the density of these veins is hard to overstate. The entire area, all these little red lines you see on the map, these are all veins or veinlets that have been mapped at surface. And so oftentimes you'll get these 2 meter wide veins, but there will be several parallel structures. And that gives you some exceptional widths in some cases, like this one, 20 meters at 10-gram gold and 800 grams silver. But otherwise, in the individual veins, you're talking 1.6 meters at 257 grams per ton gold and over 4,200 grams of silver. 4 meters at 26 grams gold and over 3,100 grams of silver. 2 meters at 52 grams gold and over 3,200 grams of silver. So very, very high grades, both in gold and silver. And these aren't one-off, as you can see from the table here. There's several historical intervals that are very, very high grade. But our interpretation from this from the beginning was that this thing was still open in several directions, notably along strike, also parallel and at depth. And the eastern zone, which had seen far less exploration relatively, I think only had 5 or 7 holes in it, and or 5 to 8 holes in it. And I think 5 of those intersected greater than 5-gram gold equivalent or 8-gram gold equivalent. So this thing had a lot of opportunity in several directions. Notably here, where I've put this 20 meters at 10-gram gold, this is one of the best intervals. Previous modeling had interpreted this system to be cut off to the southeast. So the interpretation was that there was nothing remaining to the southeast for exploration. But our first drill program disproved that theory. And I won't get into the geology weeds too much, but there is some things that are important to understand for really wrapping your head around the potential of this thing. So this is a cross section from the north end of the main zone. So this dashed line in the inset picture here, this is far north in the main zone. And this is if you're not familiar with cross section, picture slicing the end off a loaf of bread and then looking at the end of the bread. And that's kind of what we're looking at right here. But there's kind of three units here. This pink unit, this is the rhyolitic tuff, and this is the most favorable host rock. This is where you find veins with grade. And you also find that in the pyroclastic sequence beneath that. This is another good host rock. And beneath that in the andesites, this green area, you find veins, but they don't have grade typically. And there's some important detail we'll get into there more. But this yellow unit right here that's labeled a post-mineral breccia, this was something Diego identified very early on. This had previously been identified as a host rock, and so they were expecting to find veins in here. But when in fact this unit occurred after the veins were in place, so you're not going to find veins. When you move further to the southeast, this is another cross section from further south, you see that this post-mineral breccia gets thicker. Well, they drilled these holes in here expecting to find vein, and they didn't. There was not even, it wasn't just no grades, but there weren't any veins. There's also some cross-cutting faulting across these veins. So the conclusion was that this system must have been faulted off, and therefore the veins were no longer continuing to the southeast. Our first drill program proved that to be wrong, which is a very exciting development. That was one of the most important drill targets. So we'll get into some of what the goals with the phase one drilling was. It was 2,500 meters in 11 holes of diamond drilling. And the primary goals of that was to extend the primary mineralized veins that plunged underneath the volcanics, that post-mineral breccia that I talked about. So we did confirm that. Also, what's interesting, I mentioned how that post-mineral breccia was getting thicker as we moved to the southeast. That now, as we step out further to the southeast, appears to be getting thinner again. That's important because that means that the rhyolitic layer, the favorable host rock, is again getting thicker to the southeast and the system is opening up. So that's quite exciting. The discovery of additional host rock units at depth. This was something that was unforeseen. This was a very pleasant surprise. I'll get to in detail. But the big takeaway here was that for a very modest drill campaign and a model that was completely reconstructed and entirely conceptual, phase one drilling opened this thing up in every single direction. It opened this thing up laterally, it opened it up along strike and to depth. 4 target areas were the focus of this first program. Target area 1 was targeting these veins along strike to the southeast. This was what I was just talking about. Area 2, this had 2 functions. That was to test for parallel structures to the northeast, as well as test known structures at depth. Target area 3 was to test for parallel structures to the southwest, and area 4 was to drill a couple of holes in the eastern zone. Target area 1, hole 107, this was a 75-meter step out from previous drilling. And this is where we did indeed intersect that primary structure at depth. We cut 1.6 meters at 75-gram gold and 87-gram silver. And then hole 110, this was a point of big concern a lot of people had. Hole 110 intersected veins, but they didn't have any grade. And this is really important, this next part, for understanding this. This isn't a concern. I mean, obviously we'd like to have grade in every hole, but we can explain why we didn't have grade in holes. And actually hole 110 was an important part of understanding this post-mineral breccia, as well as 115. Those holes played some key roles in explaining some of the geology here. So what we're looking at right here is a long section. So this would be, the perspective would be as if you were, say, standing on the letter E, you're looking to the southwest. This long section is shown by this magenta line right here. And what you have are the 3 units, or 4 units, excuse me. This blue area here is that post-mineral breccia that I talked about. This pinkish zone, this is the rhyolitic tuff, the most favorable host rock that's got the high grades and veins. The yellow unit is the pyroclastic sequence, which is also a good host rock. And then the andesites beneath that in green, this is where you find vein, but no grade. And you'll see that hole 107 here, we intersected the veins in the rhyolitic tuff and their high grades. Because this system is plunging to the southeast, we drilled hole 110 deep along the same strike as this was plunging, and we drilled into the andesites. It was too deep. So we missed the rhyolitic tuff, but we did find vein there, but no grade. And something that's interesting about hole 110 and 115, was they also showed that this post-mineral breccia is again getting thinner to the southeast. And this is also confirmed by the geophysics. You can see here, this is gradient IP showing resistivity. And this post-mineral breccia is outlined, it's highlighted very well in the survey. You can see this bright purple signature here, and you see that it's dissipating to the southeast. So this system, this blue unit appears to be getting thinner to the southeast. The rhyolitic tuff seems to be opening up, and we did indeed confirm the extension of that system past what had previously been explored. So this opens us up potentially for hundreds of meters to the southeast. This is a very exciting development. Target area 2, this was again to test laterally and some of the structures at depth. This intersected 4 new mineralized structures. All of these are open along strike and at depth, highlighted in hole 109 at 150 meters, highlighted by 4 meters at 3.7 grams gold and 81 grams of silver. Hole 108A, this was our headliner hole from the June 10th news release. This was our highest grade hole. This intersected a new vein, or actually a known vein at depth that we've named the Argentum vein, but this was highlighted by 4.4 meters at almost 12 grams gold and almost 2,800 grams silver. This is completely open at depth along strike, and it's also open above it. This was a fantastic drill hole, parallel structure that demonstrates continuity potential between the main zone and the eastern zone. And just to show a quick cross section, this is something that was part of Diego's thesis from the beginning, was that at surface you see all of these thin veinlets. They're narrow veinlets, but they're super high grade. The fertility of the system is just spectacular. But you'll see these narrow veinlets all over the place, and you can actually see at surface there is evidence in one case. You can actually see where the veinlets coalesce into a thicker vein in about 100 to 150 meter elevation change. And this is what we saw at Argentum here. You had near surface previous exploration intersected 2 meters at 2 gram gold and 300 grams silver, 80 meters beneath that, 4.4 meters at 11.8 gram gold and 2,800 grams silver. So spectacular development, open in all directions. I don't have a lot of time to go through things in detail here. Hole 105, this was a brand new structure. This was our biggest step out of 150 meters. This showed 3 new parallel structures, highlighted by 2 meters at almost 7 gram gold and almost 500 grams silver, right near surface, open in all directions. So that was a fantastic drill result. Hole 113, again, intersected new veins. This is northwest extension and or parallel vein structures to the west, highlighted by 1.3 meters at 17 grams gold and 61 grams silver, again at 63 meters beneath surface. Noteworthy to mention that hole 108A that I mentioned here, that's about 100 meters beneath surface, so it's quite shallow. Sorry, I'm running a bit short on time here, so I'll move through these quickly so I can wrap this up. Hole 112, this again, the eastern zone had seen far less exploration. We did drill 1 hole underneath the previous high-grade hole. We did intersect new parallel structures here, and we also intersected, highlighted by 3 meters and almost 4 gram gold and 25 grams silver, as well as parallel structures on the way to that 4 meters at 7.6 grams gold and just a trace of silver. And again, all of these are open to depth and along strike. Hole 114, there was no significant grade here, but this was drilled right into the andesite rocks, this veins was, and this hole actually drilled through the andesites. We thought that the andesites were one big host rock, basement rock, and there was no potential beneath that. But what we see, we drilled hole 114 and we were back into a pyroclastic sequence, which is a good host rock. Hole 110 also drilled through the andesites and got into another rhyolitic tuff. So this is a brand new dimension of opportunity at depth that we didn't know about. This was a very pleasant surprise. But the general model is like a Christmas tree laccolith. So you have that the andesites that spread out like sills. So you have host rock sandwiched between them. So just to recap here, now where we're at, the next steps for this, the company's funded into 2026, and that includes provisions for the next phase of drilling, which is another program of about 2,500 meters that we will commence just as soon as the weather clears. It's a weather dependent, so we're looking about 4 to 6 weeks. Multiple high quality targets produced by phase 1. there are also several regional targets on this property that have never been looked at outside of the main and eastern zone. That's the big nugget here. That's the big blue sky potential. So we'll be looking to do some mapping in geophysics to work some of those up to incorporate those into future drill programs. We've got a lot of institutional support, a lot of interest in the project. So quite happy with where we're at today and what the future looks like for this company. And with that, Jimmy, are
Very
there
good.
any?
No, that was excellent. Thank
Okay,
you,
is it a
Brian.
live Q&A or?
Yeah, no, we're gonna do the Q&A. We can you see
Okay.
the button for Q&A on the bottom?
Yep.
Okay, so there's two questions there, and I have about six more here. So you want to begin with those?
Okay, and these are just for me that are here.
Yeah.
Um, Are we currently acquiring mines and how do we spend excess capital? Well, in the junior space right now, there is no such thing as excess capital. So, but are we acquiring mines? We are always looking for other opportunities. We've looked at projects. Diego's got a great Rolodex of projects. We have several that we are interested in. But yes, to answer your question succinctly, yes, we're always looking for other projects. What carat of gold is mined from the deposit? So grade wise, I did go through some of the grades, obviously spectacular gold and silver grades. Average cost for exploration per gram of gold and silver. Can't say what it is for per gram of gold and silver. It's still early stage on that front. I can tell you that drilling wise, the cost of drilling has been about $330 US per meter. All in cost is what we had in this first program. So, very manageable costs.
All right, I got some questions that were submitted after your last in-person event that we can bring in. With phase two drilling at La Manchuria beginning soon, how are you prioritizing targets based on what you learned from phase one, particularly with the discovery of feeder zones at depth?
Um, More of a Diego question, but I think in my mind, hole 108A was one that I talked about. That was our highest grade hole. I think that that has produced some spectacular step out drill targets. That thing, it's not only open along strike and at depth, but it's also open above it. So there's about 80 meters above that before you get into previous drilling. So that's got some spectacular step out targets. I think that the primary target is going to be along strike to the southeast. As I mentioned, that was a huge target and a big success. And that was our second news release. And interestingly enough, the share price went down on that. And I think, maybe the only time 200-gram gold is disappointing is after 8 kilograms of silver. But I think that that's going to be a big part of the phase two drilling is to look for the extensions of that primary structure to the southeast.
How do you balance strategic access to capital while maintaining liquidity and broader market visibility?
Very carefully. And I don't mean that tongue in cheek. That is a daily, um, that is a daily challenge. Our whenever we make a decision, management and directors own enough of this and they have enough money invested that every decision we make is based on dilution. So, how much dilution do we endure? How much value do we expect to potentially create for that dilution? So, that's the primary consideration with everything here. Um, I think as far as market awareness, we do have some channels with our direct, with our investor group that offer us a lot of visibility for very low expenditure. And I think you have to be very cautious of where you spend your money in marketing because there's 1,000 other companies that are trying to make the same noise in the same space. So direct meetings, one-to-ones, low cost, high impact. And right now the story's getting a lot of traction. So and then as far as, add the component in of what money do you spend and where as far as exploration, you also have to consider what the market appetite is right now. And right now, where I think we're at with La Manchuria, you've got a fantastic high grade gold and silver. Those markets are performing quite well. We're starting to see the generalists show some interest in this. So I think that we're at a very early stage of something that's pretty exciting right now.
And then the last question here would be about funding. If you have drill success in the fall and there's increased market interest, how would you approach a new financing round, and would you?
The short answer is, would we? Yes. Obviously, we're a junior exploration company, so we'll always be raising money. That's just a necessary evil. Again, back to the primary consideration is what is the dilution and where does that dilution get us? So we're looking at several potential paths forward for this, and whether that's sole funding through the market, whether that's you have a strategic investor come in, either high net worth and or major, a producer. We are starting to see some of the interest from production companies. So there's several different ways that we can approach this. This is probably the most asked question that I've had in one-to-one meetings. And I just say that some of the hardest work that I've done and some of the most valuable, which is also the most valuable, is minding the capital structure and keeping this thing tight and keeping a solid share structure in long-term investor hands. And so I will be looking to do the same going forward. And I'm always cautious before I increase the public float. You can always expand that, but you can never bring it back. So the timing has to be right. And that has to be a combination of the corporate activities as well as the market interest. So I've told people that, cautiously, if they're interested in this, that the best place right now is the market, because I can't guarantee necessarily that, say the next financing opportunity, it may be very limited or non-existent as far as opportunity to the generalist. And right now, I'm quite pleased with how the shares have been trading. Very good consolidation, and I think that where we're sitting right now and fully funded for the next round of drilling, I'm quite excited for where this thing can go.
So, yeah, with that, could you just give everyone a line about how they can reach out to you and or the company if they're interested? And thank you.
Absolutely, and thank you for having me, Jimmy. Um, the best way to get in touch with this, there's the info at astra-exploration.com. You can go to our website. We do have a local phone number in Vancouver, and I like to think of myself as one of the most accessible CEOs in the business. If people reach out to me, I will respond, whether directly by email, leave me a voicemail on our corporate line. I absolutely will get back to you.
Very good. We appreciate it, and hopefully we'll see you soon, Brian.
All right. Thank you, Jimmy. I appreciate it.